Well, morning.
Morning.
Well, this is different here. I think I'd rather be back there. First, I'm thankful for the opportunity to do this. I thank Pastor Chad for asking me to do this. This is something I've kind of wanted to share for a while, but my testimony goes down some rocky roads, and it's not always fun to share something like that. But this is God's story. It's not mine.
Amen.
And that's what's the most important thing. I got a verse that I'd like to read real quick though before I start. It's in Matthew 10, verse 26. It says, "Therefore don't be afraid of them, since there's nothing covered that won't be uncovered, and nothing hidden that won't be made known. What I tell you in the dark, speak in the light. What you hear in a whisper, proclaim on the housetops. Don't fear those who kill the body, but are not able to kill the soul. Rather fear him who is able to destroy both the body and the soul in hell." When I read that verse, it's like that's fearing God, and that's what we need. But let me share a little bit about myself. I'm the oldest of 10. East side down, 8 Mile John, our area. Not the hands out of pocket. All right. But anyway, I grew up out there. Didn't grow in a home that was godly at all. Occasionally, I did grow up sort of Catholic. My grandparents were Catholic, so I did go through the catechism. I understand we're Pastor Jeb, but we were, Christmas and Easter Catholics. So that's all I really knew. I didn't really know what Jesus really did for me. I just knew there was a Jesus, But I think somewhere deep down, I'm sure there's something said in there somewhere along my life. But I grew up with a lot of emptiness in my life. Being the oldest of 10, parents that had addiction problems and didn't really mind much for the kids. So being the oldest, you kind of fell into that role as a parent. So you didn't really get a chance to grow up. So I was always searching for something, whether it was through, as I grew into my teenage years, whether it be through friends, wanting to hang out with them, drugs, alcohol, you get involved with those things because you're trying to fill this hole that you can't fill, and no matter how hard you try and more things you do, it feels like the hole gets bigger. You're just losing yourself, Okay. Get rid of this. That's what it is. All right. Anyway, where was I? Anyway, I'm going to fast forward a little bit in my life. I was here in Michigan until I was about 17. I moved to Florida. I had a father down there. Didn't know him. Last time I seen him, I was probably 2-3 years old. Moved there, and I got married when I was, 19, 20 years old, something like that. Had 2 kids. I was trying to find something that wasn't there. I was trying to fill my life with material things, other people, to fill a hole, a gap that was missing. She ended up passing away 3 years later. Went in for some type of outpatient surgery. She didn't make it through it. Came home. And so, and then there was these 2 kids there. I'm, 20, I'm very young. Don't know what to do with it. And, her mother's like, well, let me take care of the kids, and you just try to figure something. So I come back to Michigan many, many years later. Just fast forward, and end up working, doing my thing like I always did. Just selfish things. Just trying to fill my life with things that wasn't gonna fill that hole. Got married a second time. Shortly. I was still pretty young. I was in that marriage for probably 14, 15 years, but it was still empty. I felt lonely. I felt alone, like it was still something missing. And what ended up happening to me is I got something. Well, let me back up a little bit. I started going to church when I was in that marriage, probably the last 5 years of it. And I went in here, said the sinner's prayer. Don't get excited yet, because I didn't submit to God. I was still living the same life. I didn't fully submit to him. I don't know, maybe I believed in my heart that there was a God, and I read the Bible and did things, but I didn't ever submit it to him. And I kept living the same life. Eventually ended me in state penitentiary. I spent 5 years in Michigan State Penitentiary, all the way up in the UP. I remember when I first went into prison, they sent me to Jackson prison. It's just like you see on the TV, these 4 tiers of cells, side by side. Walk down the road and you just look up it, and there's like all these guys screaming and yelling. And it's like, I was like, how am I going to do this? They put you in a cell by yourself. You're in there, you get out, you go walk in the yard, once a week for 45 minutes. And then besides that, you go to chow hall. This is what they call quarantine until they decide where they're going to put you. They have to classify you. And then in that time, I started praying to God. I was like, all right, God, if you're real, help me out here. He said, don't send me to the UP. Keep me close to my family. Where do I go? I go to pack up that night. The officer will tell you how this happened. And he goes, they're not really supposed to tell you where you're going. And he says, pack up, you're leaving in the morning. I said, where am I going? He goes, I hope you like bears. I already knew right then. Almost as far north as you go. I'm all the way up in Newberry, Michigan. It's up there, But that's where God started moving. This is where God made a change in my life. This is where he had to break me to get me to submit. While in that prison, I was angry for the first year, I was like, how am I going to do this? 5 years, I'm living in a life of fear of, you don't know if you're going to wake up the next day, if someone's going to take you out. It's a different world. People don't think in prison like you think out here. It's a dog eat dog. You're always like, someone is always trying to get over on you, and you have to be aware of that. Well, anyway, I started going to church there, and God started working on me, and he finally broke me one day. I'm walking the yard, because you get yard time out there. I'm out there, middle of the yard, just walking back and forth, and it just clicked. This is what it is. I had to submit to God and give him everything. Not just part of it. You had to give him everything you have. And you know what? I felt freer in prison than I ever felt on the outside. I had an opportunity there to really serve God. I wasn't doing time. I was on a mission. I was on a mission for God. God took me, he molded me. In that church in there, when I first started going there, we had an amazing chaplain that was a pastor on the outside, and he was a church builder. When I first started going there, I always started going to church. There was 20 people there, and it was a bad situation. There was all kinds of bad things going on at the church. I'm not going to get into details of it because it was bad. But this chaplain come in, and we started praying. There's a group of guys that we used to get on the yard every day, even though we're not supposed to do it. We weren't allowed to pray on the yard, but we'd do it anyway. So we'd start praying, and the next thing you know, this church starts growing. Next thing you know, we got 250 people at service. Next thing you know, we got 2 services, 250 people, 300, Then God does this. This guy's like, hey, why don't you start learning to play guitar? I was like, why? So I don't play guitar, It's like, all right. I didn't know at this time this was God. I started learning. Next thing you know, I'm in head of the praise and worship band. After 3 months of playing, I'm like, what am I supposed to do? But I didn't know God was preparing me for this. The things that God does, it's amazing. There's another verse that, I don't know if you're familiar, it's Joel 2:24. He says in Joel 2:24 that you're going to regain the years that you lost. He talks about, let me see if I can find this real quick and read it. That's fine. But anyway, we'll talk about the locusts eating everything up. And then that verse hit me in prison because he said he's going to restore the years that were lost from you. And I was like, what does that mean? what are lost years? And at first I was like, well, maybe he's going to restore my time, let me out of prison early or something, but that wasn't it. That's not what it was about. What I came to conclude is there are lost years of unfruitful years that we had. It was lost years of painful years we had, of selfish years, of Christless years, rebellious years, of loveless years. He restores those by submitting to him and giving it all. God blessed me coming out of prison. I didn't have that hard of a time coming out. Within 2 weeks, I had a job. It was just a little oil change place, but I was there for about a month. And the next thing you know, a month later, he goes, oh, here's a job for you. Paying much more money, might be a tough job. I'm still at that job, supervisor of the department. Hear me, just an ex-con running a department. It's like, I never thought in a million years. God blessed me with an amazing wife. He brought Caroline and I together. That wasn't us, that was God. God woke me up, when I had no substance in my life. I wanted to live this life with the power of the Holy Spirit. And I couldn't do it on my own. And this is what God did. He molded me, and he made this possible. And that's the one thing you take from this, is no matter what we go through and what we've done in our life, God can restore it, and he can repair it. And that's not my story, that's God's story. This is God's story, not mine. So the credit goes to God. And we should be thankful and be encouraged that, the things in life can be tough, but we can get through it, reliance on God and just trust him. And there it is. It's really that simple. It's simple, but it's hard, Life's hard, but God's good. All right. Thank you.